My name's Sebastian. First of all, thanks so much for coming to Berkeley. I don't agree with everything that you say, but it's certainly an honor to hear you speak.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So my question is, as a libertarian, something that I've always had difficulty with is that it preaches small government and very frugal spending to try to reduce tax rates, and yet it also seems to preach having a massive military budget, having basically getting your business and everybody else around the world, just not in the people here at home. Can you explain why you think it's a good idea to have a massive government and as a result higher taxes, but on the one hand having a smaller government here at home?
Okay, so the question is for conservatives why they want a big military industrial complex, presumably, but also preach small government here at home. And you characterize that as libertarian, but the truth is, to be fair to the libertarians, there's two wings to the Libertarian Party. There's the strong on defense Libertarian Party, and there's the weak on defense Libertarian Party, the kind of isolationist Libertarian Party, which is older school. So the view of conservatives is that the government basically has one major function, right? To protect you and your rights. That's essentially what government is there to do. And protecting me involves, for example, having a police force. Protecting me from threats, foreign and domestic, is one of the obligations of the President of the United States. So the goal is that so it depends on how much of a threat you think is extant outside the United States. I think that there are significant threats to American interests all over the world. When you're the big dog, there are always threats to you all over the planet. And this is why, for example, I don't treat the government protecting me from my own stupidity in the same way that I treat the government protecting me from external threats like terrorism. And one of the things you'll hear from President Obama is that more people in the United States are killed, drowning in buckets of water every year than are killed by terrorists. Yeah, well, the federal government has no moral obligation to prevent me from falling into a bucket of water. That's me being a moron, right? They do have an obligation to prevent people from coming across the sea and crashing planes into the building where I'm working. So, the question is really what level of military might is necessary in order to protect us, and I think we can actually have good conversations about what that constitutes, where military is properly deployed, but the kind of completely anti-military, we can have a small military routine, in a world where terrorism is so rampant, and a world in which American interests are so diverse, I think that we do have to protect our interests. So I'm very much in favor of a strong military. Also, I think that the stronger our military, the less chance anybody screws with us.
I want to know more about the Zoe Tur charge and what happened after.
Oh, okay, so in order to memorialize what had happened, I went down to the police station and filed a battery charge. And also because I have a general rule: you don't get to touch people with intent to harm, right? I mean, this is a basic principle. And let's put it this way: if the situation had been reversed and I had grabbed Zoe Tur by the back of the neck and threatened Zoe Tur, no question I'd spend the night in jail, no question. So I went and I filed the charge, and the police investigated. It shouldn't have taken much investigation. It was on national TV. I mean, granted, nobody saw it, but it was on national TV. So I got a call back from the cops about 3 weeks later, and the cops said that they had recommended to the DA that they go forward with charges, and the DA didn't want to do it. And the reason the DA didn't want to do it is because we live in a nation of identity politics. Zoe Tur is transgender. I am not. He didn't feel like it was a winning case, because if he brings it to trial, then political correctness would dictate that that nothing would probably come of it. So this is why, when people say that there's an unjust criminal justice system, well, it sort of depends on who's being prosecuted, right? So that's sort of how it wound up in the end. Lady in the back here.
Thank you. Why do you think American Jews are so liberal and they're just such a small exception?
American Jews are really left because most American Jews are not Jewish. What I mean by that is that you can be ethnically Jewish and not religiously Jewish. So Judaism is a couple of things, right? Judaism is your mom is Jewish, if you're religious, your mom is Jewish, you're ethnically Jewish. And then Judaism is also a set of beliefs and values. And most Jews don't hold to any of those beliefs and values. Jews are, by poll, the most atheist group, in the quote-unquote religious group in the United States. Asking why Jews are, so if you take that out, if you take out the ethnic Judaism, then what you see is a bunch of high-earning, highly educated, white people who live in major blue areas, right? And once you describe people like that, then is it really any wonder that so many of them are to the left? And the answer is no, of course not, because where people can't get wrap their brain around is, okay, the modern American left has become more and more anti-Israel. Why are so many Jews still pro-modern American left? The answer is most American Jews don't care very deeply about Israel. They don't think it's important. They care more about abortion and gay marriage than they do about the state of Israel. So that's, as I say, if you're a Jew and all you care about is matzo balls and bagels, and this is what makes you Jewish, then you're not really very Jewish. I mean, it's like asking, why are lapsed Catholics? Why do lapsed Catholics vote Democrat? Because they're not really very Catholic, right? They're lapsed. That's the answer. Let's do this. Any leftist got to go first? Anybody who has a contract? One guy. You're great. I appreciate it.
So my question is on one of the first topics that you talked about.
Sure.
When you were speaking about that, you listed off a number of statistics showing that black people are more likely to get stopped by police because they have more guns. My question is, why do you think they have more guns? My personal view is that they have more guns because black people are poorer in general because there's a deep racial history in this country, a racial divide. That's my view.
Okay.
If you don't agree with that, why do you think it is that black people are, on average, poorer than white people, on average, more likely to get arrested, and et cetera?
Okay, so the truth is, and this is sad to say, but the black crime rate has been significantly higher than the white crime rate for literally 150 years. It's been very high for a very long time. The black murder rate was 10 times the white murder rate in 1900. So this has been true for a very, very long time. And the real question is, why didn't that ratio narrow right after the Civil Rights Movement? Right? Because presumably things changed after the Civil Rights Movement. So, and why exactly is it effect of white privilege when black people kill black people, which is the majority of people who are killing each other, right? The vast majority of black on black, the vast majority of black crime is black on black crime, right? It's not black on white crime. So the idea that it's and it also doesn't match up with poverty rates. Poverty and crime don't match up as well as people would like them to. The left has been trying to make this argument for a very long time, and it doesn't work. I mean, when you have, for example, poor Asian communities when they came to the United States didn't have anywhere near the level of violence that poor Italian communities did when they came to the United States. It varies by culture, actually. Culture makes a difference. The reason that I would suggest that there is such high violence rate in the black community is specifically now because you have a culture where there are young black men growing up with no fathers in the home. The black middle class was growing actually pretty quickly in the 1950s, and then in the 1960s, a couple of different things happened that really trashed the system. One was the welfare system said, unfortunately, to black fathers and black mothers, that you are better off if you actually don't stay in the home. You get benefits that increase if the father leaves, right? And then that creates an incentive to single motherhood, which is seriously problematic because the government can't be daddy, right? Only a father can really be daddy. And then, beyond that, there is a long history, and this has been maintained. And this is where I will agree that there is quote-unquote white privilege, but not now. So it used to be white privilege, and now it's actually a lefty argument. So the white privilege was, and this is true, that white police forces did not police inner-city black communities or southern black communities. So when black people killed each other, the white police forces just said, fine, go ahead and kill each other. Like, really, this is true historically. Right? White police forces did not police black communities, so there's a lack of law enforcement in the black community, and so people break down. This is true in any tribal society where you don't have law enforcement or any overarching justice system. Right? So it's not unique to American blacks. This is true wherever there is no real justice system. People tend to take justice into their own hands, and you end up with retaliatory killings all over the place, which is what happened. That was true all the way until the 1960s, and then in the 70s and 80s when the crime wave really started to hit, right? Between 1960 and 1994, the violent crime rate in the United States multiplied by 400%, right? 400%. And when that happened, there was a real crackdown, right? Now this brings up Bill Clinton, right? This is what we've been seeing the discussion of this week with Bill and Hillary Clinton. Bill Clinton is right. What he did and he pushed for very strongly was we need better standards of policing in inner city communities, and we need more cops, not less cops. Broken windows policing, more cops in inner city communities, and the crime rate starts to drop. So what I would argue is that what you're seeing now in the increase, the new increase in crime, is what you're actually seeing is the impact of the left saying, get those cops out of our communities, they're racist. Right? In the last couple of years, we've seen the crime stats start to spike again. In really dramatic ways, increasing double digits in murder rates, increasing double digits in cities from St. Louis to Milwaukee to Chicago to New Orleans, largely in black areas, unfortunately. So, how much of that's the narrative. How much of that you want to call white privilege and how much you don't is up to you. I would say that what's happening now is not white privilege. What I would say is that, Jim Crow created terrible systems of law, and those systems of law allowed cultures to flourish that were violent and problematic, and then that was exacerbated by the federal government getting involved and under-policing, And now, when we actually have a situation where the police want to go in and clean things up, now the left has insisted that that not happen. So that's not, I don't count that as white privilege. I call it, my problem with the term white privilege as a general rule is that it's too vague. What I just laid out for you is a relatively specific narrative with actual cures. Right? White privilege does suggest that there's some cabal of white people out there saying, I want black people to die. I don't think that's true. Right? I think that there are laws that were on the books that are racist. I think there were racists who promoted those laws. I think those laws were basically wiped out in the 60s. I think those racists were basically voted out of office in the 60s. And now what you've seen is the impact of other unintended policies that have created tremendous problems in the black community, but all of which can be solved, all of it. All of which can be solved by individual responsibility. Individual responsibility. Right? Don't tolerate crime in your own community. Work with the cops. Ensure that your kids have fathers in the home so they're not gangbanging and walking around on the streets with guns. Yeah, fella in the beard up there. Yeah, there's only one of you. That's you.
Thank you for your lecture. I wrote the snaps along. As a fellow member of the right, I share your deep frustration with identity politics. Indeed, it's one of the forces that helped shape my political views and galvanize my move to the right. Yet I'm increasingly dismayed with the identity politics finding a home on the right, particularly the quote identitarian and alt-right movements. As members of the right, what can we do to combat this destructive force within our ranks? I'm particularly concerned how it's been whitewashed, no pun intended, by some members of the right with an audience.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think the alt-right movement is a bunch of masturbating losers who think that they are transgressive because they are douchebags. And there's a difference between being politically incorrect and being a douchebag. Right? This is the thing that really upsets me about the alt-right. First of all, I don't think they're right. I don't think they're actually right-wing. Like, I think that a lot of the alt-right are people who believe in high trade, like trade protectionism, which is not a right-wing policy. They believe in big government policies that benefit particular groups, particularly white folks. Right? This is not a right-wing movement. It's just a reactionary movement, which is different. Right, I agree with this. I agree. It's the European far right, but I don't think the European far right is traditionally American right. Right? I think that they're big government, xenophobic, anti-immigrant groups in the European Union. Some of which, some of the opposition to immigration is fully justified on certain grounds, but not on the grounds of we have to preserve the number of white people in the society. That's an idiotic claim. Why is skin color relevant? How about we have to preserve the number of Western people who believe in Western ideals in the society as opposed to skin color? The alt-right movement mixes up being politically incorrect with just being terrible people. And again, like I've said a number of politically incorrect things tonight, including the fact white privilege doesn't exist. It's the impact right now that we're watching of bad individual decision making. This is politically incorrect. And the way you can tell it's politically incorrect is because Bill Clinton said it, and then his wife had to throw him right under the bus. But the alt-right's idea of political incorrectness is here. I'm going to make a meme with a stereotypical 1855 Southern cartoon with a black guy, or I'm going to grab a Der Stürmer cartoon and tweet it at Shapiro. Right? This is really transgressive, and it shows how cool I am. No, it just shows that you're a loser, and and you suggesting that what makes you like a big, strong man is your deep desire to buttock massage Donald Trump is really a demonstration of you just being a sad little peon looking for a father figure. Is that possibly harsh enough? The only way to fight it is to mock it and to call it out, and I don't think that it's worthwhile humoring the people who push this forward. I mean, I've called it out about as strongly as I possibly can over and over and over. And I've fought my entire political life. I have fought against the idea that conservatism is a movement of nativists who hate black people and hate Hispanics and are xenophobes and bigots and all the rest of this. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true, and I don't believe these people are part of the movement that I am part of and part of the movement that I hope to build. In fact, I think all they do is give the left exactly what they want, which is the stereotype of conservatives that they've been pushing for literally as long as I've been alive and long before that. They're not doing anybody any favors. This is my big problem with Trump. I think that Trump plays into, I think that Trump is everything I have fought against conservatism being. He is destroying, and he's bringing along with him a lot of people who consider themselves conservative. And I would just ask them, what about Trump is conservative? That doesn't mean everything he says is stupid, although 90% is. It doesn't mean that all of his policies are bad, although he doesn't even know his own policies, right? His policies policy advisors who write them, it doesn't mean any of that. Some of, like, a broken clock is right twice a day. I would say that Donald Trump is about half broken, so he's right 4 times a day, right? But the fact is that what Trump has done is he has dragged the conservative movement kicking and screaming toward a group of people who actually believe in bigger government, who believe in a certain nationalism not based in philosophy, but based in just pure nationalism, which is not something I am for. Right? I believe in nationalism for the United States because we actually are an exceptional country based on certain foundational principles. Donald Trump believes that America is exceptional because we're here. Really, like this is if you ask him what makes America exceptional, he'd have a hard time telling you, except that Americans live here and Americans are special. I don't believe that Americans are genetically more special than any other group of people. I think that the ideals that drew literally tens of millions of people here are what's special, and that's why we've always had such a great record of drawing the best and the brightest from across the world. This is why the welfare system has done so much damage to immigration. Right? It used to be that you come to the United States, the idea was you come here to succeed. You come here to do well. You come here to build a life for yourself, and the trade is you're not going to get help. Right? The trade is the government is not going to help you. You're going to come here, you're going to abandon everything you knew. Right? You're going to come out here, and you're going to be a pioneer. That's what America was about. And that's what made us exceptional. And that's why we drew the best people from every place else. Because it takes risk-seeking, smart people to want to make that bargain. I don't think that Trump cares about that bargain particularly. And that's what frightens me about Trump, and that's why I think that his followers, that's why I also think Trump is a politician of convenience, and he just appeals to whatever group is flattering him that day, whether it's Vladimir Putin or the alt-right. A lot of hands, sorry about this. Let's see, fellow right here.
Okay, so you had some disturbing statistics about millennials. Do you think they're going to mellow out as they age, or are we just screwed going forward?
So, I mean, somebody asked me to say once on Twitter, I had a request, please say something nice about millennials. And my response was, in the 1970s, they didn't exist. I think that millennials can be educated, but it's an uphill battle. I think that millennials have grown up in a system that tells them that they are each, again, individual precious snowflakes with unearned superiority and self-esteem, and it's very hard to take that away from people, because if that's all that you base your virtue on, how you feel about yourself as a person, that's hard. That's hard. And so I spend my career making people feel bad about themselves, right? And it's a life goal, and so far I'm great at it. But the reason for that is because I believe in earned self-esteem. Do something good for other people, help out your community, produce products and services that other people want to trade you for. Now you have earned that self-esteem. I think that the millennials are going to try and craft a world where they don't. This is why they buy into Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders says stupid things. I mean, he's just, I don't even know. Does he know what century he's in? He says stupid things. Like yesterday, he tweets it. He creates a fantasy world for himself, fueled by unicorn crap. And yesterday, all of his tweets look something like the tweet he had yesterday, which was, the banks should not look for profit. The banks should provide loans at very low rates. Right? That's really their goal. And so the entire millennial generation is buying into this because, yeah, wouldn't that be awesome if the banks were just giving away free loans? No, you idiots. They were called subprime loans and they crashed the economy. When you grow up, the richest people that God ever created, okay, in the richest society that God ever created, and that mankind ever created, when you grow up in that society and you live off the fat of the land, teenagers want to rebel, young people want to change the world. What if the world's pretty good? What if the United States is a pretty good place? Will they mellow out? I would have said that they would mellow out when they get married and have kids, except they're not getting married and they're not having kids. Right? Getting married and having kids does mellow you out a little bit. You should have seen me before. So I am by nature a pessimist, which is convenient for me because it means that I'm always right eventually. Right? but I think that I do think that most people have never been confronted with ideas with which they disagree, which is why I think it's important to have discussions like this one. I think that there is hope, but it's going to take all of us anybody who believes in these freedoms, you're going to have to walk toward the fire, and you're going to have to wrest away that unearned moral superiority from people. Because that's what they rely on. They don't have to rely on knowing anything or doing good things. They know they're better than you as a human. And when you take that away from them, then they actually have to start rethinking, okay, well, what would make me better? What do I do that's so great?
Are you a feminist?
Feminists define it, no. Because feminists define men and killing babies and all the rest of it. But
in the social, political, and
so
that is the definition of feminist.
Well, that's if they're you use that definition, does that include killing babies or no?
That's a separate issue.
Well, it's sort of the definition you gave me is vague because you actually have to break down what those terms mean to you, right? Social, so I believe of course I believe women should vote. Of course I believe that women should be able to hold any job they want. I grew up in a house actually where my dad was at home and my mom worked. My wife is a doctor, right? And she took off a year to have our baby, so she's having it all, which is great. So, you know, in that sense, I certainly consider myself a feminist. I believe that women should be able to make whatever life decisions they see fit. That doesn't mean all life decisions are equally good, but men should make decisions they see fit, and if those decisions are bad, live with them. The problem I have with the feminist movement is twofold. One, they've decided that female equality means also that biology no longer exists, meaning that if men don't have to have babies, women also don't have to have babies even if they get pregnant, so I get to kill this thing. Or I get to randomly decide it's not a human. That I find offensive. And then the other thing that the feminist movement has done, and this is where I think the feminist movement went wrong, is they made the absolutely correct point in the 50s and 60s, men act like pigs. Right? Men act like pigs, they're mean to women, they don't allow women into the workplace, all of this is bad. Right? Women should be able to have all these opportunities that men have. Right? Based on merit. Not based on lowering standards, based on merit. Right? And then the feminist movement went further. They said men act like pigs, therefore we should, instead of calling on men to stop acting like pigs, let's all act like pigs. This will be the new standard, right? The new standard will be not that men should stick around and be responsible for the women with whom they have children. The standard should be that women don't need men. A woman doesn't need a man like a fish and doesn't need a bicycle. Right? Except it turns out that women actually do need men and men need women. It turns out that we all need each other in a certain way, and when it comes to marriage and raising children, you certainly need your partner. You certainly need your partner. This is the problem I have with feminism. So the basic principle, of course I agree with. It's that the feminist movement, as it has been iterated, and as it has changed over time, has become more and more radical, to the point where they want separate standards for men and women, which is precisely the reverse of equality. They want standards lowered for women in particular areas, which is precisely the reverse of equality. They want to say that they have extra moral authority to decide whether a human being is a human being or not, just because you're a woman, which I find utterly offensive. You know, so am I traditionally, again, according to your definition, absolutely I am a feminist. According to the feminists, no, I'm not a feminist because I don't believe in a lot of the evil things they're pushing. Let's see, fell all the way back.
Since the video came out, has your viewpoint changed on that at all?
No, my viewpoint was always that Michelle said that she got grabbed, she got yanked, she got bruised. End of story. Donald Trump's campaign manager lied about it. That is what it is. You don't lie about grabbing and bruising a woman. End of story. End of story. That's the whole thing.
But you said it's intent. Assault is intent. Didn't you just mention?
Assault is not intent. First of all, it wasn't assault. It was simple battery. That's what was charged in Florida. I'm not the police, right? A simple battery. Assault is a threat, right? That's what assault is. If I walk up to you and I raise my fist to you and then I say I'm about to punch you in the face, that's assault. If I punch you in the face, that's battery, right? That's the legal definition. It's the basic law. So it is a battery. An unwanted touching in Florida law is battery, right? The only reason Michelle filed the charge in the first place was specifically because all the Trump supporters had said, including Lewandowski, that it never happened, that she made up the bruises, and so she went in to memorialize all of this, which is very often what happens in these sorts of situations. So she went in to memorialize it, and the police carried it forward, which is their decision, right? By the way, the prosecutor, they're making a big deal out of the prosecutor as a Democrat. The prosecutor hasn't even taken up the case yet. Right? Now, unless you're willing to say that the Jupiter police are politically motivated to get Donald Trump's campaign manager for whatever reason, then that's number one. Number two, the idea that this is like some grand conspiracy theory, that Michelle and I cooked all of this up. This is the shittiest conspiracy ever. Okay, it's legitimately like, so our conspiracy was, presumably, right, that I would find out 24 hours after this happened that Michelle was being browbeaten by certain people not to speak about it because they were allied with Trump. And the conspiracy was that Michelle was going to go to a rally as assigned by the most pro-Trump outlet on the internet, Breitbart, right? And she was going to go there, and then she was going to stand close to Trump with her pen bombed, right, as Trump said, threatening him in her high heels and 90-pound weight, right? She was going to stand right next to him asking him some questions, knowing full well that his campaign manager, the Medal of Honor winner, Corey Lewandowski, was going to swoop in like Jack Bauer to prevent this nuclear bomb from going off, and grab her by the arm and yank her back. And not only that, she also cooked up with Ben Terris from the Washington Post to cover all of this because it was all false, but Ben Terris was in on it also for no reason anybody can suggest. And then we had also cooked up, I mean, this is how clever we are, we Jews. We had also cooked up that Lewandowski would then go online and say, I never met you, I never touched you. Right? We cooked that up. We didn't cook up that he would just apologize like a normal human. Right? Like if I grabbed a woman and bruised her, the first thing I would do is, I'm really sorry that happened. I didn't mean to do that. Right? Like a normal human. Corey Lewandowski says, no, it never happened. You made it up. If it really happened, there would be tape. Then there's tape. And then he says, well, you know, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. Okay, she never said it was that bad. Right? She said that it was a bit, like Bill Maher on Friday night said, she said it was the worst experience of her life. No, she said the fallout was the worst experience, when her employer, according to her, didn't defend her properly, and when the entire media descended on her, and when she started getting death threats, which, granted, is kind of bad, right? So all of this goes down. It's the worst conspiracy ever, right? And the fact is, all of this could have been solved very easily. Corey Lewandowski he was told by the Breitbart people what was going on. All he had to do was call up Michelle and just say, sorry that happened, shouldn't have done it, my bad. Right? He didn't do that. And then Trump lied about it, and then Trump made up his little bomb story because he's a pathological liar. I mean, Trump literally lies once every 5 minutes. This is Politico did a report on this. They went through 4.6 hours of his speeches last week, and they found he lies once every 5 minutes. And today, my site put out a list of Donald Trump's lies. I had to stop my guy at 101. I had to stop my guy at 101. Okay, and that was like today. So you know, the whole situation is it was overblown, but it was overblown because the Trump campaign decided to make it overblown. Right? The fact is that Michelle basically went into hiding after that first week and didn't talk anymore. I left Breitbart because I felt that she hadn't been sufficiently defended, as I said at the time. I felt that this was politically manipulated, and I felt that, you know, and I felt that there's a whole cadre of Trump supporters who decide to overlook bad behavior by their candidate because they love their candidate with an undying Freudian God worship. Again, this is so easy to fix. It's so easy to fix, but Trump has no capacity to de-escalate or apologize. And that's what this went to. And he'll lie rather than doing those things. That's why I think people picked up on this whole thing. But in order for Trump to claim that he was victimized in this particular situation, he has to exaggerate the original circumstance, right? He has to say that Michelle claimed that she was thrown on the ground and raped brutally by Corey Lewandowski, and that never happened. And she never said that happened. She said she was grabbed, she was yanked, she was bruised. Okay. Okay, and your guy said that it never happened at all, and she was a liar and attention whore. Right? He calls her an attention seeker. This is Trump's fault, pure and simple. And it was very easy for him to fix it. But Trump is not good at fixing things. Trump is good at saying things. And he's not even that good at that. He's good at saying things at a 4th grade level in small words and incomplete sentences. Back there. Yes.
Mr. Shapiro, so I was wondering, out of all the presidential candidates, who you trust to be the best leader? Because I feel like all the candidates in this election do have that certain, like, unappealing trait.
Yeah, I mean that's generally true of most election cycles. Like everybody's looking for the perfect guy, and there's never a perfect person to be the candidate. It's only in retrospect we think of these people as perfect. You know, my guy's been Cruz for a long time. My guy's been Cruz. I've been very open about this for over a year. I backed Ted Cruz in the primaries against David Dewhurst in Texas in 2012. I know Senator Cruz. I think Senator Cruz is a constitutional conservative. I think that he actually believes in the quaint notion of limited powers and what the government can and cannot do. You know, this of course means that I am a conservative because I don't think that Donald Trump is the best leader. But you know, I think that I think that, you know, Cruz, of all the people out there, who do I trust as president? He's the guy I trust as president because I think that he's the guy who knows the Constitution and believes in the Constitution most. And the minute that he doesn't, I'll dump him. Right? I don't worship candidates. I believe in my principles. And the candidate who best reflects those principles is the guy for whom I vote.
Based off the previous question, you said you endorsed Cruz. What do you feel about him saying, I'm a Christian first and American second?
This is I haven't seen the quote, so I'll take it for granted he said that because I haven't seen that. But I think that every religious person believes in their loyalty to God over their loyalty to country, and they hope that their country reflects their loyalty to God. Right? This is true for every religious person, which is why historically religious people have been willing to die for their beliefs. That doesn't mean that, I don't think that my Judaism is in conflict with American ideals. That's why I love America. Right? I don't think that Cruz believes his Christianity is in conflict with American ideals. But if the American government, I think what he means by that is if the American government were to say to him, okay, Ted, you have to stop being a practicing Christian now, right? Which, by the way, is not historically unprecedented. There are many, many countries that have done this sort of thing. Then he would say, well, I'm a Christian first, not loyal to the American government first. That's how I would read that, and that's, I think every religious person ever feels this way. Like in the history of religion, feels that their loyalty to God trumps everything, including the founding fathers who actually founded the country. They believe that their loyalty to God trumps everything else. Let's see.
Can you talk a little bit about the mentality of the people that have jumped over to Trump, particularly those who have, I'll take Sean Hannity as an example, spent most of their careers arguing for conservative principles, and Breitbart, for example. Why did they jump on the Trump train?
So I think there are a couple of reasons people jump to Trump. I think that the first reason is because there are some people like Ann Coulter who believe the only issue is immigration. Right? Ann believes, like really, this is Ann's perspective. Her perspective is if you don't shut the border, everything else is done. Right? There are too many new voters coming in. They will be made voters by Democrats. She said this, right? And so she believes that Trump will build his magnificent, beautiful wall with a big, huge door in the center, and that he'll do everything he says he will, which will be the first time he's kept a promise in his entire history of marriage. And would be a shift from what he said 2 years ago when he said that Mitt Romney, or 4 years ago when he said Mitt Romney was too harsh on immigration. But she believes that and ignores the fact that he said he would be flexible, and it ignores the fact that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. But, okay, you believe Donald Trump is going to be the greatest on immigration. That's one reason. The other reason is there are a lot of people who are just enthused that Trump is always fighting people. Like, they feel like Mitt Romney never fought back, really, and that John McCain never fought back, but particularly the media. There's a feeling that Trump whacks away at the media. The problem is that that extends to everyone. Right? So Donald Trump, I've said this since he jumped in the race, Donald Trump is a hammer in search of a nail. Right? Sometimes he hits a nail, sometimes he hits a puppy. Lately, in my view, he's basically been on a puppy hunt. Like he's only hitting puppies. Like the last time he hit a nail was a long time ago. But there are a lot of people who feel like, okay, well at least he's swinging. He's swinging wildly like a crazy wolf bag. And he'll be the guy who Hillary doesn't want to fight. He's the only one who can win, not because he's popular, but because in a fight he can land a lucky punch with Hillary, right? So that's the view, is that he's a winner, he always wins, No, but that's the view, is that he's a fighter. Okay, I think that that's overblown. I think that he's puerile. I think he's a child. I think that the media has not even begun to open up on him yet. I mean, how many of you have heard the quote from Donald Trump that women ought to be treated like shit? Which he apparently said directly to New York Magazine, or was reported by New York Magazine in 1988. That would be the headline in the newspapers from the day he gets the nomination to the end of the election cycle. Yeah. Right? And that'll be the kinder stuff they're bringing up about him. Yeah. I mean, they could be bringing up about him as talking about the breast size of his 1-month-old daughter, right? Which he also did. He's a weirdo. But I think those are the reasons why there are so many people resonating with Trump. And then there's a real reactionary side to the conservative movement that has sprung up in the aftermath of the left constantly attacking us. So we feel like the left is constantly attacking us. They're constantly attacking us. So if they attack us, we have to defend whatever they attack. And generally, that's not a horrible rule, except once in a while, the left isn't totally off base. Right? The left feels like, okay, you know, the right feels like, okay, they were all attacking Sarah Palin. There was this resonance with Palin, too. They're all attacking Sarah Palin. They're saying she's stupid and she's ignorant. She doesn't know what she's doing. We have to defend her. This is unfair. Well, some of the attacks were unfair, and some of them were attacks on a lady who, you know, is now doing freestyle rap during her campaign speech. So I think these are the various reasons why people back Trump. And then there are the people who really are badly motivated and back Trump because they're nativists and they're alt-right people, and they actually think on the white nationalist board that he's going to restore he's going to fight back against the browning of America and we need a whitening of America. And there are people who actually speak like this, unfortunately. And that's a segment of his populace too. So I think it's a combination of people who are looking for a fighter and have settled on the guy who just hits everything. A combination of people who think immigration is the only issue, and a combination of the people who are just really bad folks. I think they're bad folks. By the way, I think there are a lot of bad folks on the left, too. I'm just pointing out the reason people have asked me, why do you focus so much on Trump? Why don't you focus on the left? Because he is the left, and they're saying he's on my side. Right? That's why I'm focusing on Trump so much. This is why I spend a lot of my time fighting Trump, because it's one thing for somebody to be, it's one thing for somebody out in the middle of the street next to my house to be graffitiing. It's another person for that. That's bad enough. It's worse if that person breaks into my house, starts graffitiing the walls, and then says he owns the place. and to me, that's Trumpism. One more. Sorry, I will go all night with this. Let's see. You've been waiting a while.
So aside from the 2016 election, the New Deal basically set the precedent for how government should operate and put a way to like Medicare, Medicaid, all these sort of like big government sort of exploitation of the people-ish, I guess. So is there a way for us now? Is there a clear path to sort of like stay away from that and maybe focus on moving the country more aside from government intervention?
So how do you fight back against big government, essentially? So I think that the number one issue Republicans have is that they discuss politics in terms of efficacy and efficiency as opposed to morality. The left only talks in terms of morality. So to go back to Bernie Sanders, the reason he's resonating with all the people your age is because he doesn't know efficiency from a hole in the ground, right? He doesn't know what policy works, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders is somebody who thinks that healthcare and education in Cuba are just magnificent, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders doesn't care about what works. He cares about what's right, right? All I care about is what's right. What's right, of course, means breaking into your house and stealing half your crap and telling you you deserve it. But Bernie Sanders' view of the world is to constantly speak about morality. Hillary does it too. She just does it poorly because she's the spawn of Satan. But, I got to tell you, this election, if Trump is the nominee, I've said I'm never Trump, and I'm certainly not going to vote for Hillary. That's because you cannot force me to make a choice between the Antichrist and the spawn of Satan. I'm just not going to do it. But the idea of the left is they constantly talk in terms of morality, right and wrong. The right never talks in these terms. So the right will say things like, Social Security is going bankrupt. True. Social Security is not going to support you when you're 65. First of all, we're all going to live beautiful and die young, right? We're young. So we're never going to hit that age, right? That's the idea, is that we're all young. Nobody has thought beyond the next 2 years, right? You're still not, your parents are still paying for you, for God's sake. So the idea that Paul Ryan has is going to come to you and he's going to appeal to you on the basis of an entitlement that's going to expire 45 years from now is a little bit far-fetched. You have to make a moral argument, which is no one has the right to steal your money, right? They don't have the right to, and you don't have the right to steal anybody else's money. Stealing other people's money, voting for somebody to put a gun to your head and take your cash, this makes you a bad person, right? If you and I and Bill Gates are in a room, and you and I decide to vote to take all of Bill Gates' money, that doesn't make us anything other than thieves, right? We are thieves, and that makes us bad humans, right? So every argument ought to be couched in terms of morality, and this is particularly true with big government. The thing I hate the most from the right is this constant refrain, yeah, socialism, it's a great idea if only it worked. It's not true. It's an unbelievably morally shitty idea. It's a terrible idea. Socialism... The reason is this. The basic premise of socialism is, I'm here, I'm breathing, give me crap. Right? You have an obligation to care for me. I have a right to health care. I can force that doctor to go to medical school, expend $200,000, spend her entire life learning medicine, and then I can walk into her house and force her to provide me medicine. Right? That's nonsense. It's immoral. Right? You don't have a right to somebody else's labor. That's called slavery or indentured servitude, and it was ruled out in the 13th Amendment for good reason. Right? The left's perspective is I have a right to housing. From whom? From me? I'm not going to build you a house. You don't have a right to demand a house from me. Go out and work for your house. Right? Capitalism, by nature, is the opposite. Capitalism is the idea that I will starve unless I give you a good or service that you want. Right? If I don't give you something that you want, I'm not going to eat tonight. It's forced altruism, effectively. Right? We have to have a trade. We have to come to some sort of consensus. I have to give you something cool, and you have to give me something cool. Right? It's great. Socialism is rape, and capitalism is consensual sex. If we spoke in those sorts of terms to young people, that's something they would understand much better than Social Security. I mean, people, like young people our age don't want to hear. If you were citing, the minute you knew Mitt Romney lost the 2012 election is when Mitt Romney said that the real question was, if you just lowered the top marginal tax rate by 2.5%, how much would the GDP grow? What? What? Yeah, I mean, well, you know what we understand is here. This is true for young people, old people, everybody. Well, we understand. I'm going to borrow a line from my friend Jeremy Boring, who's a filmmaker. What he always says is, you can always tell the good guy and the bad guy from a narrative. You have to tell a story. What's the story of our politics? When you watch, and generally you can tell the narrative from who's the bad guy. In any movie, you'll find the most important character is the bad guy, not the good guy. And everybody plays off the villain. This is why the left is really good at making the right the villain. The reason the right has lost every presidential election since 1988, basically, right? They only won 2000 because of the Electoral College, and 2004 was a wartime presidency. The only reason for that is because during the Cold War, the right argued that our real threat was this evil empire, this external enemy that was going to nuke us. And the left argued that the real threat to the United States was the right. So when people felt more threatened by the Soviets, they voted for the Republicans, and when they felt more threatened by the right, they voted for the left. After the fall of the Soviet Empire, the right is still, the right refuses to say that the existential threat to the United States is the left, which is true. And the left continues to say that the right is the existential threat to the United States. So we're the villain in this little play. Right? We can say ISIS as much as we want, but the average American doesn't fear ISIS as much as the idea that the right wing is going to storm in their Bible in hand and force them in a theocratic manner to do what they want. Right? This is what most Americans fear more than the reality of somebody storming into their business place, Quran in hand, and shooting them. Right? So the fact is that because the right doesn't discuss politics in terms of good and evil, it's a problem. I mean, the Star Wars analogy is the one my friend likes to use. He says, you know how you can tell? Star Wars is beautifully done because Luke Skywalker is legitimately the most boring hero in all of film. It's really boring. He's so boring he ends up alone on an island, and no one cares. Right? But the reason you know Luke Skywalker is the hero is because the first Star Wars movie opens with a giant, unbelievably large Empire ship flying over the camera for 8 minutes, right? And then a tiny little rebel ship, this is how you know they're the good guys, right? Getting sucked into the maw of this giant ship. And then if that weren't good enough to tell you who's the hero and who's the villain, then they blast open the door and this giant 7-foot-tall guy, dressed all in like a Nazi stormtrooper suit, walks up to somebody, picks him up by his throat and strangles him for no reason. Like, oh, maybe that's the bad guy. Right? So, and then when you cut to Luke Skywalker, you know, he's a whiny teenager who's just looking to go down for some power converters. Right? But you know he's the good guy because you know who the villain is. Republicans don't understand this, so they talk about efficiency as opposed to talking about who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. In every political narrative, there is a good guy and there is a bad guy. At least when it comes to broad-scale political narrative and not to getting to the best policy. If you want to have an open discussion about what's the best policy, then you can talk efficiency. If you want to talk about winning politically, the way you win politically and win hearts and minds is by explaining that the left is immoral, not just wrong. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.